amigos, feliz viernes. Hoy es viernes, yo soy Rory, estoy contento estar aquí contigo. A couple weeks ago I floated out a survey and gosh, nearly 200 of you responded to it within the Common Ground folks community learning medical Spanish. And you mentioned a handful of topics that you would like to be able to talk about in Spanish regarding mental health. And depression was the #1 topic. And so that's what we're going to work on today. And we've got 4 more in our series, our 5-lesson series here at Video Viernes for temas de salud mental, so some mental health topics. So thank you so much for your contributions and your requests for topics within this mental health series. And I'm excited to get started with you. So today hablamos depresión. So objetivos para la lección. So our objectives for this lesson are, first of all, to look at el acrónimo SIG E CAPS. It's an acronym that kind of lines out some depression screening questions. Within that, we'll get a sense for sentimientos, how people are feeling, comportamientos, what their behaviors are looking like, and pensamientos, what they're thinking about. And then we'll also look at some tratamientos comunes, referring to medicamentos and comportamientos, behaviors, and then terapia as well. Profesionales relacionados, so professionals, medical professionals that are a part of treatments and terapias, and then tipos de terapia as well, so types of therapy. So let's get started with some basic vocabulario about emociones first. Entonces, emociones, ¿cómo se siente? How do you feel? ¿Cómo se siente? We've got a handful of emociones aquí. None of them are super positive. So there's a whole other set of positive emotions. We're focusing on the other end of the spectrum here. So aburrido, bored, agitado, agitated, agotado, like drained, totally drained, ansioso, anxious, así, so, cansado, tired, confundido, confused, decaído is like physically, emotionally low. Decaer is the verb to fall. And so I don't know the perfect word in English to express it, but decaído would be just like really low in all aspects. Decaído. Deprimido, depressed. Desesperado, hopeless. Entumecido, numb. And we can use it for physically, like a body part physically numb, but when you're talking about mental health, just that general feeling of numb, like no feelings, then entumecido can work as well. Enfermo, ill or sick. Enojado, angry. Frustrado, frustrated. Igual, the same. Inquieto, restless. Inseguro, unsafe. Insensibilizado, another one of those words that can mean like metaphorically numb, like entumecido. Okay. Muy mal or mal, just not well or ill. Más o menos, more or less. Nervioso, nervous. Peor, worse. Preocupado, worried. Regular is just okay. Solitario, lonely or alone. Triste, sad. And PHQ-9 asks a question. We're going to take a look as we go through today's lesson. We're going to refer to what PHQ-9, that depression screening instrument, what questions it asks that relate to what we're looking at. Okay? So PHQ-9 asks a question like this. ¿Se ha sentido decaído? Have you felt decaído? Here's that decaído word again. Deprimido, depressed, o sin esperanzas. Sin esperanzas, without hope. Sin esperanzas, desesperado is another word for that. Okay? So that's what PHQ-9 asks about how you're feeling. So you could take this open-ended question, ¿Cómo se siente? Or you can make it a closed question. Se siente, and fill in the blank. Okay? Let's take a look at how we could use other verbs also to ask about feelings. So verbos útiles con emociones. First of all, estar. Estar is our to be verb. Are you, you are, etc. when it comes to emotions and feelings. So está, yes or no question. Está triste? Are you sad? Está deprimido? Are you depressed? Ha estado. It's no longer are you, now it's have you been. Ha estado solitario? Have you been lonely? Sentirse, el verbo to feel. Se siente, do you feel sad, lonely, depressed, etc. Se ha sentido, now it's the have you felt, have you felt. Tener, do you have? Tiene or ha tenido, have you had? See? Okay, so tres verbos aquí with just the regular present tense, yes, no question, or what we call present perfect, which is the have you felt, have you had, have you been. Bien. Now, when we talk about estas emociones y preguntas, sometimes we want to talk about some duración o frecuencia de tiempo. So some duration or frequency of time, some time words that we might consider casi todos los días, almost every day, con frecuencia, frequently, de vez en cuando, from time to time, en los últimos meses, in the recent months, en las últimas semanas, in the last or recent weeks, más de la mitad de los días, more than half of the days, nunca, never, recientemente, recently, and then finally, todo el día, all day long. So stringing some of this together with the vocabulario de emociones from the previous slide, we could ask something like, ¿se siente triste? Do you feel sad? Más de la mitad de los días, more than half of the days. ¿Se ha sentido? Have you felt? ¿Se ha sentido culpable, guilty? En las últimas semanas, have you been feeling guilty in the recent weeks, etc.? Okay, bien. Moving on to SIG E CAPS. What does that even stand for? SIG E CAPS is a common acronym to help you talk through and figure out where someone's at emotionally. But la S refiere a sueño, sleep. La I, interés, interest. La G, guilt, so we'll talk about culpa. La E, energía, energy. Y la C, concentration, so we'll talk about concentración. We'll talk about apetito, psicomotor, and suicidio también. Let's get started with sleep. Con sueño. Unas preguntas comunes sobre el sueño. ¿Ha tenido dificultad para dormir? Have you had difficulty sleeping? Dificultad para is one for you to write down, highlight, underline, whatever you do. Because you can put any verb after that and communicate the idea of difficulty doing that. Difficulty sleeping, difficulty eating, difficulty whatever it might be. Ha tenido dificultad para dormirse. Okay, now dormir es reflexivo. What's the difference? Dormirse reflexivo es la acción de falling asleep. And so we have difficulty sleeping, difficulty falling asleep. Okay, reflexivo. Duerme bien. Do you sleep well? ¿Cuántas horas duerme por noche? How many hours a night do you sleep? ¿Es más o menos de lo normal? Is that more or less than normal? ¿Se despierta en la noche? Do you wake up at night? ¿Por qué piensa que no duerme bien? Why do you think you're not sleeping well? See? PHQ9 asks the sleep question like this. ¿Ha tenido dificultad para quedarse o permanecer dormido? Have you had difficulty staying asleep, basically? ¿O ha dormido demasiado? Or have you slept too much? Interés. Unas preguntas sobre interés. ¿Qué cosas le gustan hacer? What things do you enjoy doing? ¿Ha cambiado su interés en actividades que antes disfrutaba? So has your interest level changed in activities that you previously enjoyed? ¿Ha perdido interés en algo? Have you lost interest in anything? ¿Ha tenido menos interés en algo? Have you had less interest in something? ¿Ha notado menos deseo sexual o una bajada en la libido? Have you noticed less sexual desire or a lower libido? See? PHQ9 asks the question about interest this way. ¿Ha tenido poco interés o placer en hacer las cosas? Have you had little interest or little pleasure in doing things? Guilt, culpa. Unas preguntas. ¿Lamenta o se arrepiente de algo? Do you lament or arrepiente, regret algo? ¿Usted lamenta o se arrepiente de algo? That's a mouthful. ¿Se siente responsable o culpable por eso? Now, do you feel responsible for or guilty about that? PHQ9 asks it this way. ¿Se ha sentido mal con usted mismo? Have you felt bad about yourself? O que es un fracaso, or that you're a failure? O que se ha quedado mal con usted mismo o con su familia, or that you have quedado mal con usted, that you have essentially, quedar mal is when you break like an expected norm between you and someone else, or you and yourself is what this is asking. Quedado mal con usted mismo o con su familia. So have you done something that makes yourself think poorly about yourself, or makes your family think poorly about you? Energia. Energia. Unas preguntas. ¿Ha notado cambios en su nivel de energía? Have you noticed changes in your energy level? ¿Ha subido o bajado su nivel de energía? Has your energy level gone up or gone down? ¿Tiene suficiente energía para cumplir con sus labores, deberes, responsabilidades diarias? So, do you have enough energy to cumplir con, to accomplish or fulfill sus labores, your work, your essentially obligations or responsibilities that are daily? So your daily work, your daily obligations, your daily responsibilities. PHQ9 asks the questions like this. ¿Se ha sentido cansado o con poca energía? Have you felt tired or with little energy? Concentración. ¿Puede concentrarse bien en la escuela o en el trabajo? Can you concentrate at school or at work? ¿Le es difícil enfocarse? Le could be stylistic un poquito. Is it difficult for you to focus, básicamente? See, you could ask the question without the le. Es difícil enfocarse, but le, throwing the le in there sounds really good in español. ¿Completa sus labores a tiempo? Do you complete your work on time? PHQ9 asks it like this. ¿Ha tenido dificultad para concentrarse en ciertas actividades? Have you had difficulty concentrating with certain activities? Tales como leer el periódico o ver la televisión, such as reading the newspaper or ver la televisión. I suppose, who reads a newspaper? Maybe we should add focusing on your social media feed. I don't know. All right, muy bien. Apetito. El apetito. Unas preguntas. ¿Tiene apetito? Do you have an appetite? ¿Disfruta la comida más o menos igual como antes? So are you enjoying food more or less than you used to? Recientemente come más o menos de lo normal. Recently, are you eating more or less than normal? ¿Ha bajado? Have you lost o subido de peso recientemente? Have you lost or gained weight recently? PHQ9 asks it like this. ¿Ha estado sin apetito o ha comido en exceso? So have you been without an appetite, or have you been eating too much? Psicomotor. Unas preguntas. ¿Tiene dolor sin razón? Do you have any unexplained or inexplicable pain? ¿Se siente inquieto o ansioso? Are you feeling restless or anxious? ¿Ha notado una falta de coordinación recientemente? Have you noticed a lack of coordination recently? ¿Le cuestan las actividades diarias como cepillarse los dientes o vestirse? So are daily activities difficult for you, such as brushing your teeth or getting dressed, etc.? Okay, PHQ9 asks it like this. ¿Se ha movido o hablado tan lento que otras personas podrían haberlo notado? Have you been moving so slowly that other people maybe have noticed? O, lo contrario, ¿ha estado muy inquieto o agitado que ha estado moviéndose mucho más de lo normal? Have you been restless or unsettled or anxious about the fact that you're moving more than normal? Bien, suicidio. Unas preguntas sobre suicidio. ¿Ha pensado recientemente que tal vez la vida no vale la pena? Have you thought recently that maybe life isn't worth it? ¿Ha pensado en suicidarse o quitarse la vida? Have you thought about suicidarse, literally the verb to suicide yourself, o quitarse la vida, take your life? ¿Piensa así a menudo? Do you think that way often? ¿Tiene un plan para quitarse la vida? Do you have a plan to take your life? ¿Ha pensado en hacerse daño o lastimarse? Have you thought about harming yourself? Hacerse daño, lastimarse are both verbs that mean to harm yourself. ¿Ha pensado en dañar o lastimar a otra persona? Have you thought about harming someone else? PHQ9 asks it like this. ¿Ha tenido pensamientos de que estaría mejor muerto o de lastimarse de alguna manera? Have you had thoughts about that it might be better off dead, or thoughts about harming yourself in some way? When we think about life events and life situations that contribute to depresión, we have a handful of things that we'll see in Spanish here in a minute, but think about some of las realidades de inmigración también. I think there's a good connection between the two. Es probable que un inmigrante experimenta or vive some really difficult situations, such as inestabilidad en el trabajo, so instability at work, múltiples trabajos, multiple jobs, inestabilidad del hogar, so some instability in just shelter and where you might be living, separación de familiares, and so familial separation, and you know, the family culturally is the number one support network for most Latinos. Traumas durante inmigración. Immigration is just full of risks and possible traumas that people go through. Ingresos bajos, so lower income, and dificultades sistémicas en buscar atención médica. If it's hard in general, figuring out the healthcare system, it's even harder systemically as un inmigrante, ¿verdad? So when you think about esas preguntas, those life situations that might be contributing to depression, you might ask questions like this. ¿Ha pasado algún cambio grande en la vida recientemente? Thinking of things like a muerte, the death de un amigo, un familiar, divorcio, demasiadas responsabilidades, too many responsibilities, mudarse, moving, enfermedades graves, so some serious illnesses, pérdida del empleo o problemas en el trabajo, problemas con finanzas, so some financial issues, problemas con otros miembros de la familia. These are things that you might ask about in general, talking life events that may contribute to depressive episodes. And when you think about las realidades de inmigración, you know, depending on when and how recently someone has possibly immigrated to the U.S., there might be a lot of overlap with these kinds of situaciones que causan episodios de depresión. Talking medicamentos. ¿Alguna vez ha tomado un antidepresivo? Have you ever tried taking an antidepressant? ¿Cómo le fue? How'd it go? ¿Le ayudó? Did it help? ¿Se sintió mejor? Did you feel better? Cuando hablamos antidepresivos, we've got a handful of categorías o clases de antidepresivo, ¿verdad? And some of these are some real doozies to say. We've got inhibidores selectivos de recaptación de serotonina, okay, such as Prozac, Celexa, Zoloft. And then we have inhibidores selectivos de recaptación de serotonina y norepinefrina, like Effexor or Cymbalta. Tricíclicos, inhibidores de monoamino oxidasa. And when you talk about medicamentos, específicamente los antidepresivos, you might find yourself expressing some of these things. Es muy importante tomar los medicamentos como están indicados, so as directed, ¿verdad? Cuando empieza un medicamento nuevo, when you're starting a new medication, es normal tardar hasta 3 o 4 semanas. It's normal to take up to 3 to 4 weeks para sentir los efectos del medicamento, to feel the effects of the medication. Bien. Psicoterapia y profesionales. Let's start with profesionales. Who are the folks possibly involved with therapy or tratamientos psicológicos? So we've got el asociado médico psiquiátrico, the psychiatric PA, consejero certificado, so a certified counselor, consejero pastoral, a pastoral counselor, enfermera de práctica avanzada psiquiátrica, so a psychiatric NP, right? NP. And these are just in alphabetical order, no orden especial besides alphabetical. Proveedor de salud mental, mental health provider. Psicólogo, a psychologist. Psiquiatra, psychiatrist. Terapeuta familiar y de matrimonio, so like a marriage and family therapist. Trabajador social, a social worker. Okay? Bien. If there's others that I'm missing, comment below and I'll help you with those, okay? So, ¿alguna vez ha intentado la terapia? Have you ever tried therapy? Consejería, asesorías are other words for therapy as well. Con un terapeuta certificado, with a certified therapist. ¿Cómo le fue? How did it go? ¿Le ayudó? Did it help? ¿Se sintió mejor? ¿Le gustaría, would you like, que le remitiera, that I refer you, a un proveedor de salud mental certificado? Would you like me to refer you to a certified mental health provider? Bien. Terapias para la depresión. Terapias. Dos tipos principales de psicoterapia we're going to talk about. Y los dos pueden ser de corto plazo, 10 a 20 semanas, o de largo plazo, más tiempo. ¿Sí? So, tenemos terapia cognitivo-conductal. Y en terapia cognitivo-conductal hay un énfasis en enseñar nuevas maneras de pensar y comportarse. So the emphasis is on new ways, teaching new ways to think and behave. Ayuda a las personas a cambiar sus pensamientos y comportamientos negativos. So it helps people change or exchange their negative thoughts and behaviors por un estilo de pensar y portarse más positivo. For a style of thinking and behaving that's more positive. Terapia interpersonal ayuda a las personas a entender y resolver relaciones personales que pueden causar o empeorar su depresión. So, it helps people understand and resolve personal relationships that either cause or worsen su depresión, your depression. Okay, we're getting close to the end here, but we have más vocabulario relevante para considerar. When you talk mental health, you're likely going to be adding some of this vocabulario in your conversación as well. Autocuidado, self-care. El ejercicio, exercise. El sueño, sleep. La aceptación, acceptance. La atención. It means literally attention, but also in mental health conversations, this is how you would say mindfulness. La conexión familiar, so familial and family connection. Conexión social, social connection. Dopamina. Higiene, hygiene. La nutrición, nutrition. La participación social, so social engagement. La serotonina, serotonin. Las habilidades para enfrentar situaciones en la vida. Habilidades, abilities, para enfrentar, to face, situaciones en la vida, coping skills. Los ejercicios para relajarse, so relaxation exercise. And químicos en el cerebro. All right, bien. So para practicar con su compañero. You can't just learn this stuff passively. You have to be practicing it. So get together with your conversation partner, whether that's over the phone or on Zoom or maybe a socially distanced cafe. And if you don't have one, make a note in the Learning Medical Spanish Facebook group, and people are connecting with each other that way. Find someone that you can practice with. Bien. So talk through SIG E CAPS and or the PHQ-9 with your conversation partner. So get the downloaded notes, click on this image here, and it will take you to the Spanish version of PHQ-9 you can print off and practice talking through. Ask the questions. Use the vocabulary and talk about treatment options. And that's really the only way, practicing is the only way you're going to get comfortable with this stuff. So, hey, gracias por aprender español conmigo. Juntos mejoramos comunidades. Together, we really are improving comunidades. Para más español, head over to commongroundinternational.com And if you want to take a vocabulary test, head over to certifiedspanish.com, create your free account, and take some free medical Spanish vocabulary tests. All right, muy bien. Gracias por unirse conmigo. Thanks for joining me today. And this week, send me your thoughts about ansiedad, because that's our topic for next week. So what are the things that you'd like to focus on during next week's anxiety lesson? Send it off to me, and I'll be glad to work it into our lesson next week. Hasta luego!